Hi, I am Camille on William Street, and we are back. I'm still working on block 3 of our year-long online quilting bee. So we've got the block all made up, and now we're going to talk about different ways that you can quilt it. So I love star blocks, and this one with the star and the star is one of my favorite blocks of the entire quilt along that we're going to do. So I'm super excited to come up with some different quilting ideas and show you some different ways to quilt it. One of the easiest ways to really look at and approach a quilt block of any sort is just to look at what the shapes are there and to work within them. So you can see here I've echoed in and put the pebbles in each of the 4 corners. Didn't make new shapes, just went ahead and filled in the squares that were there. Draw some straight lines to echo in. The reason I went ahead and put straight lines here is because of the dense echo quilting, pebble quilting here. The straight lines give some nice contrast. In the stars, you can go ahead and just echo in those star shape. I would leave a little bit of a channel. That's going to really make it pop and stand out. And then fill in with your favorite fill. Here I've got some swirls. Again, on this inside triangle, I really wanted the focus to be on the stars themselves. So that's why I went ahead and just echoed around the square shape behind the star. That's going to make that become a background element and really make that star pop. Here, do these bounce back curves from point to point on the star itself. You could also just mimic the fill that you've got on this outer shelves, these outer stars as well too. You'll see me use that in a little bit later when I show you the full a full quilt design. And then also you've got the pebbles on the inside, and I just went ahead and mimicked the same square shape. You've got the squares with the pebbles, mimic the square with the pickles. So all I've done is taken some of my favorite fills, my favorite shapes, and then just really used it to fill in the shapes that are already there. On this one, I've kind of started to ignore the shapes that are there and to make them be a little bit more. I've still got the pebbles in the corners, but I went ahead and put pebbles in all 4 of the corners. On the inside star, though, instead of quilting the gray and the yellow as 2 separate things, I decided to just quilt them as one. So I would draw a line between corner to corner here, and then just fill in the back and forth lines. Also, I treated the outside star and the inside star more as the same type of an element and just repeated those same lines. So I've got the same shape going on in both of these. What I've chosen for the background here is these diagonal echoes with some space in between. So I've got one here, and it's really makes it kind of points all the lines to the square and makes it stand out. If you wanted some more quilting in these though, you could definitely go in every other one or even every one of them, and you could put some stuff in. You could draw some back and forth lines. Let me get the right size here really quick. So you could do some back and forth lines like this and fill some of them in that way. You could do, some wishbones or some ribbon candy. You could also do some pearls. I probably wouldn't do this though, just if I had pebbles in the outside corners. If I had a different shape in the outside corners, the pebbles would work too. And you could do every single one like this, or you could do every other one. Just kind of whatever you think, how much you want. Because you have the lines here, it's still going to make it stand out because you have the channels here. But if you did every other one, it would really make each of these opposite ones stand out a whole lot more. If you can see here, if you just do every other one, that shape there is going to really pop and become more of a statement piece. So this helps. If you add more quilting here, it is going to definitely take away some of the star, but it's still going to lead your eyes around and make that star be the central element. And so this is one more kind of different way to approach it, and this one is actually a close-up of a block that I'm going to show you here in a second on a full quilt design. And these, while they don't look like much, are actually connecting to the next star. You can see this line by having these lines that go through the star. You can see how much attention that brings to the star itself. And then just echoed some of the shapes here and filled in with some back and forth lines. And then the same thing down here, just filled in, echoed the shapes around the star itself and filled those in. I've gone ahead and done the same thing on both the star here, the bounce back curvy line echo. And then on the inside, just to mix it up a little bit, draw in these lines that kind of intersect here in the middle, and then bring in the back and forth lines as well. So I'm going to go ahead now and show you the full quilt design of this so you can really see how those shapes connect together. Alright, so when I get to the full quilt, first off, of course, I'm going to break it down. And one of the things that I really like to do with stars is it's really easy to break it down. It's just by connecting the stars to each other. I kind of noticed if I did it this way, it also outlined the star in the middle. So it broke it down in a whole different way there. So as opposed to connecting those, to leaving those as a square, I decided it would also be fun to connect them to each other, but have it go underneath. So it creates this woven look of the quilting underneath. Then I've got basically two different sections of stars that I'm working with here, the ones that connect underneath and the ones that connect on top. Oh, I have to make sure I do the top ones first, so ignore that last one. But you can start to see how these really kind of makes this forward and this backward looking stars here. And then it was just a matter of kind of figuring out, how am I going to quilt that? And I decided to kind of keep two different sections. So this section on top will echo out and fill in with some swirls. And then, of course, I'm going to do the same thing on all these other sections. So let me fill those in really fast. This is obviously a really rough drawing, but it kind of lets you see the thought process I have as I'm coming up with the design and how I look at the different sections. So hopefully that is helpful as well. I will include a better pen drawing of the actual full quilting plan that you'll be able to see how this all works out. So then after that I have these ones underneath, and I knew I wanted to keep something a little more simple, so I'm just going to put some straight lines in here. That's really going to create a lot of continuity between those two sections and really make them become one, even though they are split by that crossing section on the top. I also am looking at my stars, and a lot of times the stars are where you're going to see the prints or the busier fabrics. On ours it is all solids, but that might not be your case. So I went ahead and just did some arched outlines here. Now in this design I'm going to end up with a lot going on, so I don't want it to be too overly busy. So I actually opted to just repeat them on these stars as well. By the time you see what the negative space has in it, you'll understand why it was a little nice to keep this kind of a little simpler and give your eye somewhere to rest on those stars. And then again, the same thing, those are just going to repeat in these little tiny gray stars as well that you're not going to be able to see very well, but you get the idea of what's going on here. All right, from there I had two sections I had to break down. I have inside this section, I had inside this section, and in my head I decided what I wanted to do is I was going to do opposite. So where these sections were connected to the straight lines, I'm going to echo them and then fill all of them in with swirls to match the ones going opposite. And then these ones up here, I'm going to go ahead and echo out just straight lines all the way around the star. So it kind of brings some continuity into the design between the two, but it kind of gives some fun as each one is echoing the opposite connecting space here. I still have these sections here to fill in, and by making one more shape here, I'm putting an X. Oh, you're not able to see it very well here. Let's connect these lines really quick so you can really start to see the shape come out. Connecting these shapes here, I now have this frame around here, so I thought, well, if I'm going to put a frame there, let's really make that a nice frame, and then come in and fill it in with some more echoing and some circles. And then fill inside here. We just got some nice straight lines to fill in here. And on the other side, I actually wanted to really make this, because now at this point it really echoes, really frames out both sides of the star, just in different ways. Let's put a double echo here so that really stands out. And then just do a back and forth line to fill in this section. And so you'll be able to see it a lot better in the final one, but you can see how I'm really just breaking down those shapes and then filling in with some of my favorite fills. And that's really what I'm going to do for most of my quilting designs. What are the fills I like to use? What are the shapes that the motifs I'm comfortable with? And how can I use those in it? So this is the quilting plan that I'm actually going to go ahead and stitch out on it. It's one more, a little bit more complex than some of the other ones I've shown you.
but you can kind of see how, while it looks complex as you break it down, it's really not that hard to kind of come up with because I'm using the same motifs, using a little bit of contrast, just putting them in different sections, opposite sections, but then also, of course, breaking it down to start. So with this one, I've gone ahead and stayed a little bit more with the shape. So you can see I've got this, the more obvious shape. So I've got like the diamond here in between the stars, echoed in the square here. So with the stars themselves, I'm going ahead and just echoing each of those shapes. And then I would fill in each of those shapes with your favorite fill. So, you know, you could do a swirl, you could do pebbles, you could do back and forth lines, you could do paisleys, whatever you want to fill in those shapes there. And then I would actually do, it's going to be hard to see here, but I would actually do the same thing on these little gray squares as well. So you don't really have it filled in there. But that's what I would do there as well. And then with the shapes and around the outside, I kind of went ahead and flipped it and so did the kind of bounce back and forth curved lines. You could do a second layer if there was too much space in there, and then just kind of echo that same thing in each of these shapes here. And you could actually do this all as one continual line, so you would just bounce from shape to shape and then go back along the outside and fill those in. So that it's going to leave your empty space kind of in those white spaces and bring the dense quilting to the stars themselves. And then I would just echo whatever fill I put inside the stars. I would just do that same thing in these squares to fill in those shapes as well. But this really just kind of works within those shapes that are there, echoes them, fills them in, puts some shapes that are there, as opposed to trying to create a whole bunch of like new shapes and new things that are going on.
So I'm really excited about this one because I actually have gone ahead and I've actually made the star and the star block into a scrappy quilt of just this block already, and it's a quilt top sitting next to my sewing machine waiting to be finished. So I'm actually going to get to stitch up this quilting pattern. That's not necessarily the case with some of the other ones that we're doing throughout the year where they're going into the sampler quilt. So if you want to actually see the process and see me stitch out one of these designs onto that quilt top, definitely follow us on Instagram. That's where we post photos and different videos and progress photos of that process as I stitch it out. In the meantime, print out your copy of the pattern, print out the copy of the block, get out a pencil, definitely start sketching, putting down some ideas, playing with different ways and the different shapes that you find in those blocks, and then store that away so that when you're ready to quilt your quilt, you'll have all those wonderful ideas stored for you. And make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you get notification when we post things. You can also head to our website, www.onwilliamstreet.com, and you can sign up for our newsletter, and that we just send out weekly emails letting you know whenever we have a new video, and then also of course of any new patterns and promotions and classes and coupons and things like that that we have going on. Those always go out in our emails so that you don't miss anything. And you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and we will see you next week.